Hello, welcome to another Zoom group. You're all welcome. And to whoever is just watching this afterwards on video, hello to you as well. So, sort of following on from last week, I just want to begin by connecting a bit. So, last week I talked a lot about in existence and out of existence. In existence is what's in front of you, wherever you're watching this, in your room. So you're there. I don't know if you're with other people. I don't know if this is going into some pub somewhere on a big screen. Hopefully not. Anyway, so it's probably just you in a room and you've got your phone or your device, whatever you're watching this on. And that's what's happening in existence. And then out of existence is what's happening behind all that, or back further from that. So when you close your eyes, that all disappears. And as you pull back from your senses, that all disappears as well. So in existence at the moment, you're just you in your room or wherever you are. But then out of existence, that's where we're connecting. That's where we're all together. So let's just kind of focus on that for a minute. And we'll do a little meditation. So if you just close your eyes and immediately you've pulled back a little bit from existence. I'm opening and closing my eyes because I've got to let people in. But you keep your eyes closed. I'm not making faces at you, I promise. So close your eyes and pull back a little bit, right? And just get in touch with the sensation in your hands. If you want to put them on your thighs, that's good. You don't have to, though. Putting them on your thighs focuses your attention on the membrane of existence. Because when you have your hands on your thighs, you have the sensation inside your hands, and then you have the sensation inside your thighs. So you're feeling it from both sides. And if you lift your hands up and down, kind of just gently on your thighs, you have the sensation of, from your thighs point of view, you can feel your hands coming down and touching your thighs. And then if you put your attention into your hands, you have the feeling of your hands touching your thighs. And what you're doing there is getting a sense of the membrane between what's in existence and what's out of existence. Because all the sensation that you're feeling is out of existence. So pull back a little bit further and stretch your hands out on either side of you if you can, as if you were reaching out to touch someone else's hands. And see if you can, first of all, just get a sense of me, my energy, my hands touching your hands. Out of existence now, okay? So it's not woo-woo, it's just out of existence. You're back out of existence. Let's see if you can get a sense of touching. Don't make it up. You can imagine me touching your hands. You can do that straight away. That's not hard. But I'm not talking about that. Just get a feeling, or not even get a feeling. Just be available to have a sense of me touching your hands as you reach them out. And I'll be connecting with you out of existence, behind the scenes. And if you have a sense of that, see if you can feel the other people in the group, because we're all connected. Now, the nice thing about out of existence is you're not limited to the shape of your body. Because once you pull back from existence, your body doesn't have the same shape anymore. It's much more flexible. So you can connect with everyone in the group without having to feel like you're in a big circle, like you would if we were all in existence together. You can just feel everybody in the group. And if you're watching this video afterwards, it still applies, because out of existence isn't really limited to time the way in existence is limited to time or Time runs in a linear way in existence. It doesn't do that out of existence. So if you're watching this and you're participating, you'll still be able to feel me. You'll still be able to feel the other people in the group, because we're out of time. Out of existence is out of time. Time only really has effect in existence. Okay, so you can open your eyes, but you can still stay with it. You can still stay with that connection. Anybody have a strong feeling of connection there? So someone says, yes, it's as if my body became fuller. Yeah, that's a nice way of describing it. Yeah, I actually I can feel it in my hands for me. Feel everyone else. And then somebody else says, oh yeah, Kathy says to everybody, yes, strong connection. Great. Okay, so yeah, I've been putting the audio for these Zoom groups on my catch-up episodes of my podcast, because the catch-up episodes are more this kind of stuff. It's not just about art. And so this questions come in from somebody listening to the podcast. They say, your catch-up episodes are my favorite, and I really like that you're including the Zoom meetings. Here's my current question. QAnon is a giant, very crazy conspiracy theory that's getting a scary amount of press in the US, with Trump seemingly to support its far-out claims. Have you heard of QAnon? I can make some sense of why people are attracted to conspiracy theories psychologically, but it's still puzzling to me because this one is so extreme and seemingly gaining more power and governmental support all the time. Okay, so a nice, light little question. So I had to look it up. I knew a little bit about it, but I had to look it up. If you're not familiar with it, hang on, let me give you the Wikipedia version. Wikipedia says QAnon is a far-right conspiracy theory alleging that a cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles running a global child sex trafficking ring is plotting against President Donald Trump, who is battling them. It goes on and on and on, but that's basically it. So so the main thing that came to me in relation to this was to do with a desire for certainty. That seems to be the crux of it. Of, is this real or is this not real? Because I want to know, because I want to be certain. And those days are over. The days of certainty are over, because in a way, if you're listening to this and if you're here, like, it's almost like the days of war, external war, are over. I mean, wars may go on, but their days are numbered, because now it's about not the internal war, but like war is a kind of product of an internal thing, and it's a lot to do with certainty. So it's like, we're right, those people over there are wrong, let's go and fight them and prove them wrong, and prove them that we're right. And you could be on either side, and that's basically what each group is saying. We're right and they're wrong. And now that's all coming inside, so that the wondering about things and, looking at things from both sides, that's all starting to become internal. But not for everybody. There's a lot of people who are still, out there going, you're all wrong. And what a lot of the things that are happening now are just really highlighting that. They're just really highlighting the limitations of having a fixed position about anything. So when I was reading this, because there's lots of theories, and the thing is, maybe that's true. Maybe that is true. Because every thing that was exposed started off as a conspiracy. Like if you had met Edward Snowden in a bar and he got drunk before he, did what he did, and he told you all the stuff that he told you, you go, that's crazy. A government-wide phone tapping, data collect. No, that couldn't be true. You know, or if you were in Germany, in 1942 or three, and you were in a bar and you were like, "Hey, you know what's happening with all the Jewish people?" You'd be going, "No, no, that couldn't be true. It's too big, right?" So I'm not saying that the QAnon thing is right. Don't don't. I'm not saying that. But you can't just go, now that's crazy, that couldn't be true, because it might be true, because history, will, like you think of any big thing, like JFK being shot, there's so much evidence on both sides that you're left kind of going, Jesus, I don't know. It might be true. Or, was 9/11 an inside job? There's a lot of evidence to say that it was. I'm not saying it was, but just so much. All it does is it leaves you with, oh, shit, I can't definitely say one way or the other. I want to say one way or the other. I want to definitely go, yes, it was an inside job, bastards. Or no, it was exactly the way it was. And it's terrible for someone to say that it wasn't. But what's happening now is you can't arrive at anything. You can't arrive at anything for definite, because it's everything is there's so much information about everything, and a lot of it is very credible. Like the whole COVID thing is a great example. Like it started off as one thing, then more information came out and it became a different thing, and now it's a different thing. Like at the moment here in Ireland, they're talking about a second lockdown, which sounds like, oh yes, second lockdown. That's yes, we've had a spike in cases, but like there's only 6 people in ICU, and there's only 22 people in hospital with COVID. But we should have a second lockdown. And now people are kind of going, hang on, now I'm not so sure about that. Maybe we shouldn't, right? But it's the same thing. It's like when it came out initially, it was like, oh my God, that sounds terrible. We don't want to be like Italy. Tell us what to do and we will do it. Yeah, you all should stay at home. Okay, we'll all stay at home. Um, but now it's different. Now it's like, hang on, if you're trying to get us to lock down again, and now we know enough a bit more, we've got more information, so it's like, we're not so sure, and maybe it's not, maybe it wasn't, why did we lock down in the first place? Hang on a minute. Like another good example is I watched a movie, you can watch it on YouTube, it's called Planet of the Humans. It's not by Michael Moore, but it's I think he's a producer on it, and it's about the green movement and how it's pretty effectively been co-opted by fossil fuels. So all the solar panels and all the green stuff and everything that makes you feel good is probably doing as much damage, in some cases more, and it's pretty much being controlled by fossil fuels. It's a very depressing, it's a very depressing watch. So you're again, it's like, oh God, I thought being green was all right. Now oh God, I can't find certainty. I want to be certain about something, but the current situation is saying no on lots of levels. So like say with the QAnon thing, going back to what the person's asking about is why people are tuning into that. Because if you're in a certain kind of consciousness, I don't want to talk about levels of consciousness because it sounds a bit snobby, but if you're a certain kind of configuration and you don't want to deal with uncertainty. You want to, because it's very, like uncertainty is very unpleasant to deal with. It's just, it feels kind of awful. Excuse me, because with certainty, you sort of have a feeling of you know where you are. Like you only have to think about death. It's a great example for how seriously we don't want to have a think about uncertainty, because you know you're all here, so none of you have died. I haven't died, but I know people have died. So, and everybody seems to die. So, chances are I may die as well, or I may do that thing that everybody else is. So that's the same for everybody. Yeah, most people like behave as if they're going to live forever, and they just don't want to think about it at all. Yeah, and some people are like they have a lot of energy into not thinking about death or that they're going to die someday. And that's like a really fundamental thing. Like you can't get more fundamental. Like most everything else is kind of arbitrary because it's, a possible future. But death seems like it's common for everybody. And yet most people don't want to, think about that. Like, I've talked to people in their 80s and they're obviously close, they're closer to dying possibly than I am. I mean, you never know. But if you bring it up with them, some people have got, they're very at peace with it, but then others are like, it's almost, like you've, how dare you, how dare you, remind me of my mortality. And I've always found that really strange because it's like, Jesus, you're 80, you're much closer to it. I mean, yeah, I could get hit by a bus, but, you know, the odds on that are, much greater than you because you're old. You're probably going to die sooner than I am. Haven't you given it any thought? Like, and I'm not talking about the sort of people who are like, oh yeah, God is going to take me and I'm going home to all that. And I'm not talking about that kind of person. Just, well, even those kind of people actually can get kind of a bit twitchy about it. Hang on, someone's asking me, why are people attracted to certainty? Why do people like certainty? Are they just looking for guidance? No, I don't think so. I think it is to do with trying to avoid the feeling that you get when you really get into how uncertain everything is. It a little bit to do with sanity. Like we we like to, when we go asleep, when we wake up, we like, the cup to be where we left it and the bed to be in the same place and the house to be the same because it helps us be sane. Because if everything moves every night, it's very disturbing. So we like to have as possibly is a response to death. It's like if we can try and make things a bit certain, then we don't have to sort of stand on the precipice of life, because it can feel like that when you just really settle into how little we know. Like when you really get a sense of the mystery of yourself, and like I've just talked about me for me, like I know loads about myself. I mean, I'm what, I'll be 57 this month or next month, and like I've spent pretty much my whole life reflecting, so I know a lot about myself. But that's like a tiny amount compared to how much I don't know, and I'm very aware of how little I know about myself. Like I'm painfully aware of it, and it comes out in all sorts of ways. Like things will trigger something in me, and I'll, you know, like I was watching some show on telly that had, in one of the characters had this memory flashback, and it just triggered. Like I'd had a memory of a trauma that happened to me when I was 3, and I thought I knew what happened. But then just through watching this show, in whatever way it just triggered something in me, I just had a whole like 50% extra memory of it. And it was awful. Like it was way worse than I thought. And, that's like just a memory. That's just a human thing. I'm not talking about, and that's not even that's like something associated with this little personality, that I am. But compared to the vast, like, where do I go every night? Where did I come from? Like, what is this? I mean, I'm laughing with kind of slightly hysterically, because those are the sort of things that are, like when I really start to think about it, when I start to turn my frontal awareness back towards the mystery, my deeper part of me, it's like I haven't a clue. There's this huge thing that, comes into this, inhabits my body and is my body and is me. And yet, like, what is it? What is it that wakes up? What is it and where do I go when I'm not conscious? And what happens there? And where do these like insights and, senses of things and this presence, where does it come from? I don't know. Right. And it's kind of much much more reassuring to go, oh, no, no, it's all just me and my brain and my body, and it's my mind and all that stuff. Oh, yeah, okay. I can feel myself calming down when I think of that stuff. It's like, oh, yeah. Except I know it's not true, or it's not the whole truth. So like, I think historically we look back on this time as a huge event, the whole lockdown COVID thing, because it's so out of the ordinary. Like people compare it with the Spanish flu. Yeah, but that's kind of something black and white pictures. Like everybody was just trundling along thinking, the world is going along, everything going great. And then what? Like everything just stops? Like that is so disorienting. And it was on top of, like, it's a big disorientation on top of like Donald Trump being elected. That was very disturbing and disorienting. It's like, what? How did that happen? Brexit was a very disturbing thing here, well, in the UK. It's like, how did that happen? And then say even like I can remember when Barack Obama was elected. I think I was very teary. It was so emotional. And it was like, oh, it's so fantastic, particularly after, 9/11, George Bush, the Iraq wars. It was all very dark. Dick Cheney, it was all very dark. And then it was like Barack Obama, oh, brilliant. Finally we've something great. And then, Edward Snowden comes along. It's like, what? And then all the drone stuff comes out. And then what? Hillary Clinton's not brilliant? Oh, God, is there nothing? Is there nothing we can hang on to here? That's what's going on at the moment. Hang on, someone said something now. Humans attach to stories for certainty up until maybe 200 years ago or so. The main story we got our certainty from was our religion. Yeah. The great leap through the 20th century was the greater connectivity of humanity through technology, phones, TVs, radios. This allowed for greater variation of our stories and more uncertainty. Now it's smartphones and social media. The story is whatever the last tweet or headline was. It's ever changing, leading to more uncertainty. Yeah, I don't think it leads to uncertainty. I think it just highlights it. Just highlights the like in existence, the action of the mysterious part of our lives, or the mysterious part of our who we are. That's pretty terrifying as well, because of the seeming randomness of things, like how things can just happen. That's probably another reason why the COVID thing is so disturbing, is because it's sort of everywhere. Every country has gone into it, so it's like everywhere. It's a sort of a universally random thing, or seemingly random thing. Excuse me, but then it's like, well, hang on, maybe there's somebody behind it, maybe there's it's all been planned, and it's like, well, what do you do with that? So one of the things that came to me, like, was this quote from Aldous Huxley, which I think is lovely, and it's probably a very, it's kind of what I think when I get a little bit twitchy about the whole thing. Um, so I think it's from a poem called The Island, and the quote is, "It's dark because you're trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly, even though you're feeling deeply. Just lightly let things happen and lightly cope with them. Throw away your baggage and go forward. There are quicksands all about you, sucking at your feet, trying to suck you down into fear and self-pity and despair. That's why you must walk so lightly. Lightly, my darling, on tiptoes and no luggage, completely unencumbered." So I think that's lovely. And that's when I, if I, get a bit, if I sort of buy into it a little bit, I remember that. And there's this idea of going lightly, because you can walk across the quicksand of it all quite lightly. Because, like, if you are someone who strongly believes in QAnon or strongly disbelieves in QAnon, you're probably not here listening to me or having this conversation. And that's fine. Like, everything has its place as far as I can see. But you are, so you can walk across that quicksand lightly. And whether it turns out to be like, it's about 4 or 5 years ago now, there was a series of high profile pedophiles came to light. Jimmy Savile was one, Rolf Harris, another that I can think of. There's like a few of them came out, and like these would have been, celebrities from my childhood. And I can remember being like, everybody was like, Jimmy Savile? Because he seemed like such a, actually, to be honest, I always found him a little bit creepy, but I didn't think it was because he was a pedophile or anything like that. But um, like when that was coming out, it was so unbelievable. And same with the Catholic Church here. That person was talking about religion. Hang on. Or anyone from the Republican convention that happened this week here. Yes, okay. Well, they're probably not tuning in, but you never know. You never know. And like that's the thing. Like I remember when the George Floyd murder happened, and it was all awful, terrible thing. And but then there was this lady kept popping up on my feed, and she was an African American lady, and she was very articulate and coherent, and was basically going, "Oh well, he doesn't represent me," and had very good reasons how. What was it? It was something along the lines of, "Oh, this is just the Democrats, and anytime you're coming up to election, it's always something to do with race." And she was very convincing. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then I was watching that for a while, or not, it sort of popped up a few times, like, oh, there she is again, and listened a bit more. And then it's like, yeah, just doesn't, I just have a feeling there's something off about this. And I haven't heard another thing about her. And I think that's what the whole thing is kind of encouraging you to do, is to try as best you can to be okay with the uncertainty, and to the effect that has in me of like, yes, QAnon might be true. There might be a Satan worshipping ring of pedophiles, or it might not be true. I don't know. I'm not, there, and I just, either could be true, and I'm not going to land one place or the other. I'm just going to tread lightly forward across it all. Which, the thing about no baggage is very sweet, I think, as well, because it means that you can't, it like what that means for me is I'm not defined, and that's a very good reflection of how it is inside me. Because what I was saying about, we're reaching our hands out and everything, and how when you, like a meditation you can do, and it's very useful, is, you know, close your eyes and do what you normally would do for meditation, but then start to really feel the sensation of all the places in your body. Like, here's my hand, put my attention in my hands, then I'm going to put my attention in my feet, then I'm going to put my attention in my ears and my nose, and just be very focused about that. And then let the idea of, like, okay, because I'm out of existence and I'm just with the sensation, and if my body is like a glove puppet that I come into, then as I come back from that, I can wonder what shape I actually am. Okay, I know that in existence I've got a human shape, but as I pull back from it and I'm just with the sensation, because remember, sensation is out of existence, you know, when I touch my finger off something, and we get my glass of water again, I touch my finger off that, I am not touching the glass, I'm not registering the glass in existence, I feel it out of existence because it's in my finger. It's not in the glass, it's in my finger, the sensation. So if I pull back from all my sensation, from existence, and I go, yeah, I wonder what shape I actually am. It is wild. It's trippy. Your feet can come up and they're up beside your ears and your head. You know, you realize that, like, or it just depends, but it can change. Like, when you close your eyes, you think, okay, yes, this is my head. But when you pull back from the sensation, your head can start to come down here, and you can start to be more, I know for me, I can be more ball shaped. My camera is having trouble finding me there. Here I am again. Yeah, more ball shaped. So as I go back further and further, and you know this in your own experience from dreams, you know, like when you think about dreams from that, just that dreams are like, as you pull back from existence, you just have sensations, but they're still in the configuration of you as a person, or, you know, mostly. So you might not be yourself, you might be a different person, but you're still roughly human. Unless you have a dream that you're a tiger or whatever, and that's usually deeper back into existence. But as you get further back out of existence, you're much less contained and confined. So having that reflected in existence is very good because it's more true. So not being able to be certain about things means you're being more true in existence. It's more uncomfortable, for sure, and you run the possibility of being wrong more often, but it's got a lot more vitality to it. And, you know, like when you think about that Aldous Huxley image of treading lightly, like, you have so much more flexibility and maneuverability because you can pivot and change and adapt and move with life. Because certainly life looks to me like it's got a big movement to it. And I'm just trying to see where it's going, what it's doing. And because I love it, I want to, you know, be with it, be with the flow of it, not get in the way, not go, no, 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 I don't want that to happen. No, I don't like that thing happening. I want, you know, I want my thing to happen. So just being surrendered to it. Hang on, someone's said something. How do you support uncertainty? How do you support the uncomfortable sensations that come with uncertainty? In other people? Yeah. Well, knowing about it is great. That's like, knowing about anything like that is just really helpful. I think what I was saying, I don't know what Zoom group I was saying it in, but generally, whether somebody knows they're uncertain or not, or is conscious of it or whatever, I think treating everybody like somebody who'd just been in a car accident and but they survived, excuse me, but they're shocked. So how would you be with that person? Meaning, like, let's say you come upon a person and their car is like buried into a tree, and they're, you know, sitting beside it, and you look at them, they're like, they're okay, they're not bleeding, they're not damaged, but they are very shook. So you know, would you go, how fast were you going and were you wearing your seatbelt? And, you know, you wouldn't, of course, you wouldn't do any of that sort of thing. You'd be like, are you okay? You know, what happened? Are you all right? You know, do you want a cup of tea? Have you got we put a blanket around them? You'd be gentle, like super gentle with them. That's how I am with everybody at the moment, because that's the way everybody is. Everybody is very anxious at the moment and very having a lot of trouble with all this uncertainty because um, like one of the like being like conscious has got its downsides for sure, but one of the big upsides is that I feel like I'm engaged with this whole process, but like because this like one of the reasons the COVID thing and the lockdown hasn't bothered me that much is because like I've been living with the mystery of the majesty of the movement and crazy, unexpected, you never know what's going to happen next. I've been living with that for years. So a global pandemic lockdown, it's not that big of a deal for me. You know, it's just another thing that's, you know, happened. So, but if you have been very invested in everything in your life. This is me. This is my house. This is my car. This is my job. This is my government. This is how I feel about politics. I am, you know, like whenever I hear people saying, I'm the sort of person who, I always find it very, it just, it just really strikes me because it's like, wow, I know that sounds like self-knowledge, but I don't think it is. I think that's rigidity, you know, because it's, you know, it's so defining. I am the sort of person who does this, you know. So yeah, if you're very invested in, you know, that in that existence is all there is, and what you see is what all there is, then this would this would be really disturbing, and it will highlight a lot of very unconscious things that are going on. So like what I was talking about for me, things triggering me and me discovering things about myself, that's going on for everybody, but in an accelerated way. So people who've had no interest um, in anything to do with consciousness and self-awareness, it's being forced down their throat at the moment, and they um, are having a lot of trouble with it. So you get a lot of backlashes like QAnon and no, QAnon is not true, couldn't be true, and how that feels. Um, like I saw somebody go, you know, some retaliation to it was like, well, you look, come on, no, child sex trafficking trumps everything, and not they didn't mean like to do with Donald Trump. They meant, you know, Black Lives Matter. Yeah, but what about child sex trafficking? Um, the growing gap between the wealthy and the poor. Yeah, but what about child sex trafficking? Like you can't say anything that isn't trumped by that. You know, it's like the get out of everything card. It's like, yeah, but it's a cabal of Satan worshipping child sex traffickers. Like you can't. It's so extreme. But if you, you know, are haven't done any kind of self-examination, or it's not been of interest to you, or your system has been configured, because like from my perspective, the bigger movement of life here, it's just a sort of an amplification of what I've observed in myself and in other people through working with people and just, you know, the global kind of sense of things. And everything seems to boil down to consciousness informing unconsciousness. That seems to be what life is about. And that seems to be the process. So what we call growth, development, the spiritual path, a linear kind of idea about things, all that seems to reduce down to unconsciousness informing unconsciousness. And consciousness and love are interchangeable, as far as I can see it. So you could say love informing unconsciousness. So I watched that movie Vice, I think it's called. It's about Dick Cheney. It's a great example of it, of like just a lot of unconsciousness at work. Um, and there was no informing of consciousness in that movie, but it was just a good example of like what happens when unconsciousness kind of conglomerates together. Because again, it's all moving. Like nobody is 100% bad or 100% good. Like we've all got, it's all this movable. It often feels like weather patterns, like where people are like little planets. They've got weather clouds going around them. And just depending on the weather, sometimes the clouds are apart and the sun shines through, and you can see this beautiful, radiant being, loving being coming through. And they say great things and have, profound wisdom. Other days, the clouds are very much over them, and they're just, it's all very negative and dark and attacking and very unpleasant to be around, and sometimes dangerous to be around. And, and me too, like, some days I'm very clouded over, And as I observe my life, or I look through my life, that's what I see is like what is called growth or wisdom or clarity or any of that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, this thing I've been talking about, this mysterious part, has been just informing this kind of frontal part of me, the more ignorant part, the more reactive part. So when I think back on myself as a younger man and how I was, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I was way more unconscious back then. It's kind of simple. And that now I'm more conscious. I mean, still got plenty to go, but I could see that something, and it's not through, you know, like all the stuff that I've done, the meditation and the different things that I've done, that's just been a byproduct of this kind of boring forward that's been going on. And that hasn't really had a lot to do with me going, yes, I think I'd like to become more conscious. It's like I have no choice in it. It just happens. It just continually keeps informing me in one way or another. I mean, I don't know how it is for anybody else, but that's what it has been going on in me. And then from working with people, sort of looking at it from the outside, that's kind of what it looks like has been going on for them. So I think at the moment, just going back to this question about how do you help with people like with it. Number one, knowing and I think this for me, thinking about everybody as being like just getting out of a car accident, that helps me be really compassionate, particularly to bad behavior, because there's a lot of bad behavior going on at the moment, because that's people kind of reacting out of fear. So thinking of it in those terms allows me to be compassionate, because really kindness and compassion and open-heartedness, there's a great, because of all the change, because the ground has been broken up so much, there's a great receptivity for that at the moment. It mightn't look like it, but there is. On a, as you're going around, not globally, not in the news, not in the media, not in that kind of thing, but just among people. Because if you have a sense of, well, things are actually getting a bit more real, and that's a good thing. That means generally your anxiety will be less than everybody else's. And even just being around your presence and somebody who is very heightened anxiety, just being around you, they'll be like, oh, and just suddenly a sort of feeling of, oh, great, like not, it's just so nice to be in the presence or around somebody who's not as afraid as everybody else is. That goes a long way. It really does. I see it. Like I walk around the supermarket, I feel like Mary Poppins, like I'm not saying anything to anybody. I'm not like, going around, looking deeply into people's eyes going, it's all okay. I don't mean any of that, but just I can feel it. It's like there's a sort of a wave of, I could be kidding myself here, but I don't think so. Just a feeling of that, I'm not certainly not adding to the anxiety, and I have a feeling that it is easing. And then certainly talking to people as well, because I find talking to people, they sort of throw out hooks where they want you to take the hook, I suppose, and come back at you with your own thing, like, oh, isn't it terrible about the lockdown, or what about the kids, or it's all bullshit, or it's all a theory. Like I found myself in a situation where I was almost mediating a fight between two people online, two people I know, and they were just having a fight about, is COVID bullshit? Is it not? And they were both talking about two completely different things, but it's just anxiety talking, really. Hang on, someone else has asked me something. Love slash consciousness informs the unconsciousness. Did I get what you said? Can you say more? Does it go only one way? Yes. Yes, it only goes one way. It's very like the sun on ice. It's a nice way of thinking about it. Consciousness is the sun and the ice is unconsciousness. It just melts it over time. That's not a fantastic analogy, but it's pretty good. And that's certainly the way I think of it. So unconsciousness, you could call it evil. You could call it all the stuff that people talk about. I can't. God, I've tried really hard to sort of think about evil and this is real, and I just can't get it. Like it's. I mean, I've met probably, I don't know how many people a person meets in their life. I'd say about this stage, I've probably met 10,000 people personally, and like looked into their eyes. I haven't met anybody who I can't see the radiant being in their eyes. And I've met some like despicable people. I've treated people who have murdered other people, who have done terrible things, but I still can see that in them. So I just can't get into the evil thing. And it also, like, evil is always portrayed as being sort of intelligent. And I just haven't seen that. It just seems dumb. Like, that's why that Cheney movie is, or Vice movie is, I found it very good and chilling, because even though he was doing very underhanded things, um, there wasn't a huge amount of intelligence behind it, as far as I could see, anyway. So, like, I mean, I get frightened. If somebody like came at me with a knife, of course I'd respond. But like with the whole like evil and that idea, it just seems like unconsciousness to me. Like so far anyway. I mean, maybe something else will appear and I'll think differently about it. But at the moment, it just looks like the process of unconsciousness being informed by consciousness. And I was watching some talk with Krishnamurti quite recently, and he was saying there's no such thing as the evolution of consciousness. And I was like, really? Oh, okay. And I suppose in a way I get what he's talking about, in that we are quite limited in our perception about things in existence. So we think of things, because time's linear, we think everything's linear. Because things grow, we think everything grows. And in a way, it's true. Like, you could say, well, something happens if unconsciousness is there and then it's informed by unconsciousness, something happens. So what was unconscious has now become conscious. So that's growth, isn't it? And you kind of go, yeah. But then consciousness is eternal, and it's not bound by linear time. So when something becomes conscious, it's almost as if it never was unconscious. That makes sense. So I don't know. I kind of get what he means, but then he's probably talking about it actually from very far back out of existence, because he was quite an interesting being. but in existence, it feels like growth. It feels like an evolution, the evolution of consciousness, um, and that something is growing and changing, you know. So I hope that has been of some help to the person who asked about QAnon. There'll be other things, I imagine, other things. I mean, there's probably a certain amount of political expediency to do with it. It's timely. It looks like Donald Trump is very, trying to hang on to power, like all people who have power. There's nothing new there about that. And people who want to believe it will believe it, and people who won't. And it'll only become out in history whether it was true, because it could turn out to be like Jimmy Savile on a big scale, or it could be, like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Could be either, and we won't know. And if you're listening to this and you're part of this, it's a wrong focus to get. That's not really where the truth is. You might get to the bottom of it, like the Watergate reporters. They found the truth, but like that's so long ago, but we're still operating in that. I want to know what the truth is. Where are there weapons of mass destruction? And that matters to some people, but if you're listening to this, it's not what matters to you. And I don't mean to be presumptuous there, but it's like you'll get distracted by that. This idea of being okay with uncertainty and treading lightly, darling, in the nicest possible way, helps you not get sucked down the quicksand, because I don't think things are going to get more certain. I think probably they'll get more uncertain as things go along. And it's not like, what would happen if a bunch of aliens showed up in a big ship? Like, everyone would be like, what? We thought COVID was bad, And that's just like off the top of my head, science fiction stuff. But COVID and global pandemic lockdown was science fiction 6 months ago. But what I do think is happening is, I heard somebody describe it as like, oh, it's like birth. We're in the dark. We're going through the darkness of the birth canal. We're going through contractions, and it's painful and it's bloody and it's messy, but we're coming into the light. And I thought, well, that's a lovely analogy, but it's a bit arrogant because it's like, oh, right, it's only happening now. we're only birthing now when I'm alive. It's like, well, nothing, before or after. No, this is the birth, But I thought it was a nice analogy. But I think what's probably more accurate is that we're going through a growth spurt. It's not like birth, like black and white, It's like we're going through a growth spurt. It sort of feels like what I've observed in people and myself, of like going along, thinking everything's fine, and then something just happens and everything is pivoted and spun and like different, and I don't know what's happening. I don't know who I am. Like on a personal level, that's happening to everybody in one way or another. And it is messy and it is bloody in some cases, and it's very scary, but it feels like a lot of people are coming forward in consciousness all at the same time, in one way or another. And I see lots of very positive indicators to kind of confirm that for me. But then I'm looking for it. So, of course, I'm going to see it. Like, we always see what we want to see. But, we'll see. Time will tell. But so I think things like there'll be other QAnons, there'll be other things. And things will get to you and you'll get overwhelmed. And then you'll pop up again, like I was with that, lady after the George Floyd murder. You know, like, oh, things happen. And it's fine to be influenced, but if you're, it can be easy about it all, and as you know, treading lightly, you'll come back to, you know, you'll be like a rubber duck. You can get pushed under the water, but you'll pop up, and you can just bob along, continuing. That's what it looks like to me, anyway. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I'll probably wrap it up now. So do, if you're meditating, do check in with everybody else. Do put your arms around everybody else out of existence. It's very nice. You can put your arms around the whole world out of existence. Isn't that nice? No limits. There's no limits. You can be like that with everybody, not just the people in the Zoom group. All right, so thanks very much for coming along, and maybe see you next week. All right, bye everybody.